everybody. Good evening to tonight's business awareness revision session. My name's Helen Howard. I work here at First Intuition. Today we're going to be covering part of task 3. The elements that we'll be covering is specifically relating to technology, cyber risks and data security. Okay, so I will jump onto the questions that we'll be covering. So cyber security and technology is usually tested in task 3 on your business awareness exam. Task 3 in total is worth 17 marks. That on average gives you roughly 25 minutes in order to complete this section. So it is worth quite a few marks, 17 marks. The tasks that we'll be going through tonight are equivalent to 11 marks. I believe last week you went through the first part of it, the types of funding that you can see on there. If you weren't here last week or didn't sign up last week and you would like access to that recording, I will at the end put on the email address of where you can contact to get access to the first part of that recording. Okay, so what we'll be focusing on, I say, is the technology part and then the risks. So what we have first of all, before we jump into any questions, what I've got first of all are some briefing notes that we'll cover, where I'll give a little bit more information on technology and what to look out for in the exam, and some terminology that you need to be familiar with. Once we've gone through that, we'll then jump in and answer some questions together. Okay, so let me just reduce this down. Okay then. So to start off with, we'll be covering the technologies in accounting. So for this part, there is 2 broad sections to be aware of. We'll be covering technology first of all, and then when I move on to the other page, that's when we'll be going through data protection, information security and cyber security. So what I've got below are quite a lot of terminology that you will have to be familiar with, and then in the exam be able to apply this and know what you've learned so far to be able to answer your questions. So with technology, especially, well, in the world as a whole, technology is becoming quickly more advanced, and it's starting to become a big important part within the actual accounting role. Okay, so that's where we'll be kind of linking it, is how are developments in technology actually going to be affecting your job within the accounting role and the accounting department. So we need to be familiar with the types of emerging and developing technologies that are out there. We can have things such as outsourcing and offshoring and cloud accounting. So we've got a description of what we mean by cloud accounting below, but for outsourcing, what we mean by outsourcing, so if I just put a note up here, so if we take outsourcing, so this is where a company can hire another company to take over part of the workings of your business. So you're going to hire another company to take care over, say, a section or department of your business. Okay, it could be things like maybe you need a HR department, but your business isn't big enough to hire HR staff, things like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to a specialist. You're going to outsource that work to a specialist agency who'll be able to take care of that for you. With the advances in technology, at least things like outsourcing can now be made easier. Communicating with that HR department can be a lot quicker. You can send over any relevant documents at a click of a button, things like that. Okay, so that's what we mean by outsourcing. It's when you're kind of using somebody who's more specialist to deal with a certain area for you. We've also got the term offshoring. And what we mean by this is if you're going to transfer an activity or again, part of your business to overseas. Okay, so you're going to go overseas. Again, because of advances in technology, it does make this a lot more possible. It is something that you can achieve within a business. So so that you set up another branch somewhere else in the world. Maybe you needed access to raw materials, and in that part of the world the raw materials was a lot cheaper than what you could get here in the UK. It could be that maybe wages could be lower in that country, so you want to take advantage of that in order to make your make your product and then make a larger profit. So sometimes when we outsource or when we're offshoring, it's to do with costs. We're trying to minimize our costs by taking advantage of what else is out there. And because of that technology advancement, we are able to do that. If we had part of our business or a section of our business, another part of the world, we can still communicate with them very quick and very easily. Any documents that need to be sent can be sent at a button, a click of a button. If you needed to host any meetings, similar to what we're doing now, we can host a meeting via Zoom and via other different avenues, Teams, things like that. So it doesn't make working with people abroad any harder now. It's actually, because of the technology advancements, it makes that process easier, quicker, and then enables us to take advantage of any savings that we can get elsewhere in the world. Okay. So with cloud accounting, below, I've got a few definitions. So cloud accounting is when we're using the internet to carry out processes that traditionally were done on localized hardware within the office environment. Okay, now because it's all on the internet, it makes it so much easier and quicker to access that information. In terms of running your business, if you say, like when we had COVID, people were working from home, because things were kept on information was kept in the cloud, people were able to work from home, communicate with one another, and access documents again at a click of a button. So it did make it easier. We got that 24 access, and home working can be a bit easier to achieve. Cloud accounting is more so what we'll be doing within our accounting environment. There's lots of different cloud accounting packages out there now. I know when I used to work in an accountancy practice, the package that they used, it enabled somebody to actually take a photograph of a receipt that they'd got, and then depending on how clear that receipt was, it would automatically process that receipt for them. So it would pick up certain keywords, the amount on the invoice, and be able to process it straight away for them. So again, it's things that are accessed through the internet, but specifically related to our accounting system. So we must be familiar with the impacts of the developing technologies and the trends that are currently arising. So we're going to go through some terminology words that would be ideal if you could be familiar with before your exam. So we've got automation of processes. So this, if you think of low-level transactions for this. So for example, invoicing, transaction processing. So it could be if any of you completed level 2 and did your Sage unit, your accounting software unit, you would have had to have set up a recurring entry. So that's an automated process that makes things quicker. Each month you can automatically set it up, so maybe if it was a fixed amount to rent, that transaction could automatically be processed. We then got AI, so artificial intelligence and machine learning. So artificial intelligence is technology that can be used to make decisions, carry out tasks that in the past it would have required a human to do. So it would have required human intelligence. Machine learning is a bit like a subset of artificial intelligence, and it's where they're applying that artificial intelligence. So in basic terms, if we had to describe it in basic terms, if we've got machine learning, this is when it has the ability to learn and improve. Okay, a classic example of this can be, I don't know if any of you use Netflix or have used YouTube. When you've gone on certain videos or watched certain programs, you'll then find that the next day it's recommending programs to you or certain videos to you that are similar to what you've watched before. So that's kind of like machine learning. It uses the information from what you've already watched, from previous information that you've got, to then analyze it and then possibly request other videos, other programs that might be of interest to you. Then we've got artificial intelligence, and this is the technology that's used to make decisions. This can be very useful within accounting. It can help us to, or could be very useful for forecasting. So we're trying to analyze trends. When you move on to level 4, you'll find out more within the applied management unit. There's things that like trends that you have to follow. So for example, if you've got an ice cream seller, ice cream distributor, the trend would be that in the summer you'd sell more ice cream than you would in the winter. So that's just a basic example of what I mean by a trend. But with artificial intelligence, it can help us identify those trends a lot quicker, help us with budgeting and forecasting decisions that we're going to make. So we've also got a term called, oh, sorry, didn't mean to. So let's see, also we've got a term called blockchain. So the idea of using blockchain is, say we didn't particularly trust a group of people, and we wanted to make sure that any information that we stored, any valuable information, could be stored securely in a tamper-proof way. We would use for that blockchain. The advantage for blockchain is that whenever information is entered, it is time-stamped. So entered information is time-stamped. So if we wanted a record of when something was entered, it could be easily found. The good thing with it as well is because it can't be amended, you can add to it. The good thing is, if anybody did come along and try to amend it or try to change anything, how it works is, say that you had a block of information. Once that block is filled, it will then open up another block next to it, and that will then continue to fill with information. It's always building on the information that was previously there. So say somebody came along at a later stage and tried to commit fraud, try to alter it, something like that, they would have to go back and alter lots of pieces of information because it all builds on from one another. So it's supposed to be never erased. So you do have that audit trail. You are able to follow it through. It's also unalterable. And what makes it so trustworthy is that it is what we refer to as a transparent record. So you can see what was done in the previous blocks, see what has been added to it, and then that's kind of your audit trail, and it just makes that information that little bit more valid. The next term we've got electronic filing of documents. So information can now be electronically stored, which can make things so much easier. Again, like when I said earlier about people working from home through cloud accounting, saving the past where everything was on paper and you needed great big files. A lot of that information can now be scanned in, uploaded online, that you can have access to 24/7. Okay, so it helps with the storing of that information. And again, I know when I used to work in an accountancy practice, every few months we had to go through our files, we had to sift out old information that we no longer needed for that particular period, just because we couldn't store all the information that we had within our office. So we had to file it into a box, label this box up, send it off to a company that would then store that information for us. So if ever we did need to access it in the future, we'd then have to recall that box to come back, sift through the information, etc. It was quite a long, lengthy process. Now within accounting, because we can store that information electronically, again, click of a button, we can have access to older records. We don't need to have the cost of paying somebody to store them in great big warehouses, the cost of transporting the information there, bringing the information back, etc. A lot of documents now can also be filed online, especially with the HMRC. Years ago, when I used to do tax returns, do VAT returns, you had to complete them manually on paper, send them off. They had to be scanned in at the revenue end or manually inputted, depending on how they did their system. Whereas now we go to produce a VAT return. If you put in all your information correctly, click of a button, we've got our VAT return that's actually produced. We can get it signed, which it can do below, and then we can send that automatically off to the HMRC. Okay, so again, it saves time for us having to complete all that paperwork the old-fashioned way. Electronic signing of documents. So electronic signatures can be in many forms. It can be typewritten, it can be scanned in. So maybe somebody physically signs a document, then scans the document in that they've signed, ready to be sent off. It can also be an electronic representation of a handwritten signature. So sometimes you can quite often get these on the bottom of emails, or if you're sending out a big bulk of letters to go out to clients or potential customers, you're not going to sit there and physically sign every single letter. You could have an electronic representation of that posted onto the letters for you. So it can also be now a digital representation. I've never had to use one of these, a fingerprint or retina scan. The only time I've ever come across them is the movies where you see somebody go up and have their eyes scanned, but it is something that is in practice now and need to be aware of. We then got data analytics. So the use of data analytics can be valuable to the finance function, as it can help us provide information to stakeholders in a timely manner and be more accurate. So for example, if we're using computers more, there's just less chance of human error occurring. It can also help us improve business performance by combining financial and non-financial data. So if you think of data analytics, it's where somebody is collecting, organizing, analyzing big volumes of data. It can help us quickly identify patterns rather than somebody sitting there manually going through every single piece of information and trying to spot a pattern or a trend. Okay. So now then, so that's our technology. We're now going to move on to risks associated with data security. And in this section, we'll be covering data protection, information security, and cyber security. So an individual's privacy relates to their right of how their personal information is used by others and also held by others. So it's their right to control how their personal information is held and used by others. There's some legislation that we follow. So we've got the Data Protection Act, and that's of implementation of the General Data Protection Act, GDPR. I'm sure you've come across that at work. It's something that's quite regularly within the workplace, especially if you work in an accounting practice or something like that. So, you quite often have to do GDPR, like do a kind of online test to prove that you've got the basics of GDPR and then update that annually. So the aim is to protect the individual. So this is done by there's mainly 7 principles that we have to follow when we're doing data protection. So any information must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner. There must be a legal and valid reason for why the data is actually being held in the first place. That data must be used for the declared purpose, and it must be limited. So the amount of data collected must be limited for that declared purpose as well. So it needs to be very clear as to the intended purpose of that data. Purpose. Okay. That data must be accurate. So it must be accurate and up to date. It must not be kept for any longer than necessary. There's not a strict time rule. There's not a rule where it says it must be kept for 6 months only or 12 months only. It depends what that data is actually being held for, what the purpose of it is. So some companies might be required to hold that data for longer than what other pieces of data are being held. But all that you have to be aware of is the general rule that it doesn't have to be kept for longer than necessary. It must be held securely. So it should be protected against unauthorized processing, any loss, any damage, things like that. A business must be held accountable. So there has to be accountability. Usually this is the job of the data controller, and a business must be responsible with the data that they've actually got, and they must be able to demonstrate that appropriate measures are put in place to keep that data secure. So it must have how shall I word this? So it must be able to demonstrate that appropriate measures in place to keep secure. Okay, with the GDPR, you need to have an awareness of the Act. Don't be expected that you need to know every single piece of information within that Act. By all means, have an awareness of this, why data is kept, how it is actually kept secure, but don't be overly concerned that you have to know that the regulation or the Data Protection Act off by heart. Okay. Then we've got, so I'll just briefly cover these. I could see it's already coming up to time, and I've not even got to the questions yet, but hopefully you're finding this helpful and useful for you within your studies. So we've then got information security. So we've got physical security that we have to have. Is that information kept secure? Has it got limited access, physical limited access? So also information security. For some programs, you can actually access or have different access levels. It could be that maybe you've only got a read-only security access level. It could be that you've got the right to change the data, but access levels and what one particular person can do with that access level can be controlled. Firewalls can be installed to help keep that information secure. Integrity controls put in place, and that can be to do with inputting, processing and output as well. So we've then got cyber security. So we've got our system security. Is our network and the organization systems secure? The data, is that actually secure by using appropriate controls? We've got online security. Everything that the business does online, so any websites that we've got, any online services that we offer, when a customer goes to process an order, things like that, have we got security associated with that? Especially if a customer is putting in their bank details to pay for a particular order, we want to make sure that their bank details are also kept secure as well. So the term cyber risk is any risk associated with financial loss, disruption, or damage to the reputation of an organization for failing an unauthorized or wrong use of its IT systems. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you. Just a few terms that you need to be familiar in order to help you to answer task 3. So what I've now got is, I think there's 6 questions that we'll go through together, and hopefully we'll be able to put that into place and help us be able to identify the correct answers. So for task 3, part A, it's saying here, identify which 4 of the following features or which 4 of the following are features of a cloud accounting. Would anybody say that we label these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Would anybody like to have a go? Pop your answers in the chat. What do you think is a feature of cloud accounting? Thank you, Phil. So we've got 5, 6, 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. So 2 is very popular at the moment. With this, I can see why it's some both have got 2. If I go back here, so if we have a look here, cloud accounting is where we are actually using an accounting system that is accessed through the internet. If we see the word block or blockchain, that is where we are kind of, it's not particularly to do with cloud accounting, it's just a way of storing valuable information in that tamper-proof way. So if I go down here, the creation of a block of digital information, because it's saying block, this is referring more so, it's a characteristic of the blockchain. Okay, so I wouldn't put it for this example. There's some that are more suitable to cloud accounting. So if we take them in turn, availability of real-time data for decision making and improved controls, that is definitely an advantage of cloud accounting. If you think, say that we're looking at payroll, for example, how much we're paying our employees. A click of a button, we can have that information at hand. That can help us then decide, have we got enough money to be able to afford more employees, maybe. Say that we want to know how much units we've produced today. To the click of a button, we can find out how many units we've produced, and then are we on track, are we on target, are we within budgets, things like that. So as I've said, number 2 is more so identifying blockchain. Automation and capabilities for posting transactions. Remember when I said about having recurring entries, paying that receipt and paying that rent that we need to pay each month? This is a brilliant feature and very useful feature of cloud accounting. It helps us automate those transactions and therefore the posting of it quicker, saving time. Remote storage data, and I think you've both got that one. Excellent. Yeah. So reducing the hardware storage costs or the actual physical storage costs that we've got, we can have it remote and then therefore access it 24/7. It's a learning machine that can make decisions. Learning machine is a characteristic of artificial intelligence. So improved interaction with stakeholder groups, the fact that we can share that information easier with our stakeholders, I would also say number 6 as well. Thank you for having a go with those answers. So for B, identify which one of the following is a benefit of a blockchain. So we've got that it involves a significant amount of double checking, which leads to more reliable information. The fact that the information is actually more transparent, that is a characteristic of blockchain. So the fact it's actually more transparent means it shouldn't have as much double checking. Okay, so I wouldn't say that that is a benefit of blockchain. Then we've got, it is not permanent. Transactions can be easily removed. Would you say, just type in the chat box, yes or no, would you say that is a characteristic? Excellent, well done. No, it's not. The idea is that it is permanent, that it can't be easily removed. So those statements are actually the opposite way around. So that isn't a benefit of blockchain either. Then for the third one, it says it is transparent. Excellent. It can add value. Well, the fact that it's more reliable is a good thing. It's more trustworthy, is an advantage and a benefit of blockchain. We've then got identify two of the following, identify which two of the following are given by the Information Commissioner's Office as examples of what might occur due to data breaches. Okay, so if you think to yourself, what may occur if a data breach has actually arose? So if somebody has or within your business, if a data breach has occurred, the targeting of individuals by fraudsters is an increased possibility. Excellent, Michaela. Yeah, so I would say one is definitely one. Tax evasion, that's actually governed by separate laws. So that's not part of what we're discussing here. Identity fraud, like you've suggested there, Michaela, if somebody has gained access to a data breach, then yeah, the chances are identity fraud could occur. So that is also another example. Incomplete financial information. That answer may be as a following kind of a knock-on result of it, but I think that these two answers are more suitable for what the question's actually asking. Okay, so it could possibly happen, but I think 1 and 3 are more appropriate. Then we've got identify which one of the following is a risk to business operations posed by cyber attacks. So if you did have a cyber attack, which one of those, 1, 2, or 3, might be a risk to a business? Okay, excellent. Yeah, well done. Yeah, well done. I would go with number 2 as well. With number 1, all this is referring to is when you're redesigning business processes. So it's kind of a fancy way of saying that the redesigning. Oh, number 2, Michaela. Yeah, number 2. That's the one I would go for. Oh, I can see that you put on there which one. Yeah, it only needed one answer for this one. Issues with working capital, it again, it could be a knock-on effect, but definitely the failure of the IT system is the most appropriate answer of what could happen or what risk could happen following a cyber attack. So just got a couple more questions now. So identify which two of the following are key principles of data protection. So one, we've got personal data should be kept indefinitely. Two, personal data should only be collected if it is lawful, fair, and transparent. Three, data protection can be freely disclosed and shared, or data protection should be limited to the data needed for the declared purpose. Excellent. Well done, everybody. I completely agree with you. Personal data should be kept indefinitely. So remember that I said that there is a storage limitation. There's no particular set date, 6 months, 12 months, etc., but it should only be stored for the time period that it is needed for the consented purpose of that information. Personal data can be freely disclosed and shared. That's completely opposite to what we mean by data protection. So no, it's not number 3. F, our last one, complete the statement below. So it's saying one example of a data breach could be unauthorized third-party access, alteration of personal data with permission, removal of personal data at the request of the information. So do you think it's option 1, 2, or 3? So an example of a data breach could be wonderful. Yeah, I agree with you as well. So it could be unauthorized third-party access. Okay. If we've got permission to alter that personal data, then fine. Maybe somebody's moved address. So say at your doctor's, they would have your address. If you've moved address, then the doctors would need to know. So you're giving them permission to alter your personal data, to alter where you actually live on their records. It could be that an individual can request to have their information removed. If that individual has requested it and it's their personal information, they have got the right to request that removal. So that's not an example of a data breach either. So the correct answer would be option number 1. Okay, so that's the end of our session tonight. I hope you've found that useful. I did say that I would include the email address for those. If you want any past recordings, if you've only recently signed up, please email us at aatrevision@fi.co.uk and that recording will be sent out to you. Those of you that have attended tonight and have already signed up, you should automatically get a recording of this session anyway. If you don't, please do contact us and chase us up on that. But hopefully you will receive that tomorrow. Thank you all very much for attending.